Hi everybody. Are you able to hear me? And Hey guys. So, is the text size fine? I'm just let me show that to you. Is this fine? Do you need a little larger text or smaller text or anything? And then we'll just start off. You guys able to see the ID? And is the audio clear? Okay, so what we're gonna do is we'll discuss a few topics today related to making websites more responsive. I think for production websites, we usually use some CSS frameworks like Bootstrap or something like that. But yeah, I mean, we should know that how we are making things responsive. But two of the key ingredients that go into making content to look nice on wider screens as well as narrower screens. I think that is Flexboxes and media queries. So what media queries do is they let you create different CSS rules for different screen sizes, and Flexboxes allow you to create resizable boxes and where the columns get automatically laid out. Um, so let's just see. Let's just start off with using a bit of media queries. Okay, and what I'm going to do is say uh, I'll create a few divs in our I'll create a div called container here, and I will create a lot of divs called item. So I'll give them classes called item. Okay, and let's create a CSS file which we will link to this page. Okay, so we have an index.html file and we have a style.css file, and we're gonna create a link from our HTML to the CSS works. So let's say I give this thing my container is going to have some background color, say some lighter color, like say I take turquoise maybe. Okay, and my item has a bit darker color. Okay, so let's say you go with dark red, and I give this container some height and width. And I give these items also some height and width, say 20 pixels each. Okay, and we'll give some margin around all of these items, say 10 pixels of margin, correct? And let's just see how this looks like right now, a page that it looks like, because it's gonna look like something like this, all these items up here. Let me just increase the size a little bit, maybe height say 600 pixel and width a little bigger, 800 pixels. Height and width here maybe no 50 50 by 50 and give it a margin of 20 pixels, stuff's a little larger. Okay, so now what does Flexboxes help us do is it allows us to distribute content very easily. What we're going to do is we will change the display property. Okay, the container we are going to change it to display flex. So those who have gone through some of the videos related to responsive design, this is the basics. I think you would already know that we make the container as display flex, and as soon as we do that, this rearranges automatically, so it comes up in this line. Okay, now if I increase the number of boxes that I had, let's say I just add a few more, and so the number of boxes, they do increase, but they are not all squished together. Now if I want that, if the number of boxes there are too many boxes and I want them to just come to the next line, I can do is I can wrap the line around, like you have word wrap in Word files or in Notepad files. You can have word wrap. Here you can wrap the elements. We can go to our container and write flex wrap, and let's just set it to wrap. What happens is that it wraps around. Okay, so you can't put any more items in the first row. It comes on the second row. Now if I change the width of the container to say let's say 80%. Okay, so now it is 80 viewport width. Okay, so VW stands for viewport width, which means it will take 80% of the screen. And if I I'm changing the height property, my bad. Say 80 viewport width. Okay, and if I change the width, as you can see, the wrapping automatically updates, like the elements they wrap more and they wrap less. So I can create a container where the appropriate number of items are shown in one row and other things go into another row. Okay, or I can turn it to 80% also. I mean, that also works. That's fine as well. Okay. The idea being now is that if I want some other changes happening, so first thing that you're seeing is that the second row does not come up immediately after the first row. What happens is that if I have too many items and it needs to be distributed into two rows, the flex container automatically divides itself into two equal halves. First row in first half, second row in second half. Okay. Now we want them actually to be aligned together, one after the other, or something like that. Then we have two properties, one called align items and another called align content. So I'll just show both of them and see the difference. Align content, and if I do say flex start. Okay, see, align content, flex start, everything goes to the top. So the rows that are getting created, they are only getting created of the amount of space that is needed. Extra space is not getting allocated to the rows that are getting created. So the first row needs to be 50 pixel of height. It is 50 pixel of height. Second row is just below that. Okay, that's if I use align content. And there is also another thing called align items. Okay, so if I just choose instead of this align items. Okay, now align items, how this works is, see the difference out here, and this is very important to understand the difference that happens is this thing. If I do for align items as flex end, okay, you see the things are at the bottom. If I do align items at center, they're in the middle. Now what happens is I need two rows. The Flexbox still gets divided into two equal halves. Okay, so the rows are of one half of the entire height. The rows are not as much as needed. The rows are half of the entire box. Now if I had three rows, then it's one third it is getting divided. Okay, even less, 4 rows, 1 by 4 it is divided. Okay, But if I do align content, then what happens is the rows don't take half or one third, like they don't take 1 by n space anymore. They just take as much as it is needed. Okay, so now the case happens is that if 3 are needed or 2 is needed, the rows are all squished up together. The rows are not very big. Okay, I guess you get the difference between line items and line content. A lot of people do confuse between these two things. Okay, let's just see what are the things that that we can change here. So another thing that we can change is the justify content property, which decides how are these elements distributed. Okay, so let's check out the justify property. So justify content. Okay, and if I do justify content as say space around, okay, so I'm changing it. I mean, by default justify content is flex start, which as you see is the default property. Now if I say I change it to something else, what do I change it to? Say okay, so center. So see this centering. Now if I just reduce it a little more, you see all the items are at the center of their own row always. Okay, they're always at the center of their row. If I change it to something like space and I say space around, it's like this. If I say space between, then it's like this. So I'll show you the differences. So when you can see these 4 items out here, you can see the last items, the first and the fourth item, they're at the edge of the screen. So space between means the first and the last item are always at the edge and the space is always distributed in between. But if I write space around, okay, so then the last items are not at the edge of the screen. Okay, they are they also have some padding around them, some space around them. Okay, there's also space even. If it's spaced evenly, then each space is of same width. Okay, so this is a little different than using space around. Slight difference in the padding. You will see the last 2 spaces are half of the other spaces. Okay, so last time on the first space and last space I'm giving padding by 2, and in between I'm giving padding, something like that. Okay, and if I use space evenly, then I give equal padding everywhere. I guess that makes sense. So alignment justify, I think clear to you guys. Yeah, I hope. So let's take a look at what else. Yeah, I mean, let's just take a look at some properties that we can change in each item. Okay, that affects each other. So these properties that we're seeing, this affects the entire Flexbox, but there are also certain things that we can change in each item. Okay, so here I think let's say I put it as stretch. Okay, so I justify content with stretch. Yeah. Now in item I add this property flex grow as 1. So now you see if I put flex grow as 1, what happens is that if my justify content is stretch, then on those rows in which I do not have sufficient number of items, the flex grow property will make every item grow. Okay, let's just take a look at how we can differ in this flex grow property. So now if you see everything is always growing in an even manner, but I can change the order in which I think pretty nice faces created out there, 2 eyes, 1 face. Okay, let's try out something like changing the flex grow for different items. Okay, let's give them some IDs. Okay, so let's say ID 1 or let's just give some smaller way IDs, maybe yeah. You can create a lot of cursors in most IDs like this, ID equal to, right? And let's just add some values, a. Okay, so we have IDs from A to O with us, and we will just I think I've got a good query from somebody, Amit. It's a very nice query. What's the difference between align content and justify content? So the align content property is going to affect the direction. So if I'm, you can create 2D arrays in row major format and column major format. I think you people are, well versed with the concept. So either you are laying down one row, then the second row, then the third row like that, or you're doing one column and the second column and the third column like that. Okay, so justify changes how the items inside one row are aligned, and align changes how the rows itself are aligned in the entire box. Okay, so if I'm ordering by row, like I'm creating rows one by one, in that case align content and line items are going to affect vertically, and justify is going to affect horizontally. But if I am laying it up in a row wise manner, in that case align will affect horizontally and justify will affect vertically. So let us take a look at that. I mean, it's a good question to have. Let me just change the width and the height also to say 80%. Okay, and I will write flex wrap as flex direction, and I will set it to column. Okay, so there is a property called flex direction, and it changes how you're aligning. So now flex direction is in column, and as you can see, it's been created like this. So height, I think I will have to create something like 80 bh. Okay, yeah. Now you see, let me change the height. You see, okay. So now it's all aligned in form of column format. What I can do is also put some text in each of them, or I mean the letters itself are fine. I think let's do this. Okay. It's in red color, so let's change the color of the text to white maybe, yeah, and size, font size to something bigger, 16 pt maybe. Even bigger would work, 26 pt. Okay, big letters. Okay, so as you can see, it's now in the column. It's being laid out as columns, A, B, C, D, F, G, H, and then the later stuff, right? And if my flex direction is row, which is the default one, then it is getting laid out in this order. And if it is row reverse, in that case, so you see the flex direction, if I keep row reverse, the first row comes first and second row comes next, but inside the row, the order is reversed. Okay, as you can see, and if I write as column reverse, it's again going to be the same thing. The order of the columns are correct, but the rows inside the columns are in the reverse direction. If I want like completely reverse order, like I want to change the order of the columns plus I want to change the order of the items inside the columns, then I have to do column reverse plus wrap reverse. Okay, so now it starts from A at the bottom right and then goes up. I think you got an idea of what we're saying. It starts like A, B, C, D, and then G, H, I, J, K, L, and like that. Okay. I guess hopefully that's clear for you guys how this is working. Okay, what else were we discussing? Yeah, so flex grow I've kept as one, but what if I change the flex grow property for a particular item? Let's say I take you know uh, row and wrap. Okay, okay. So let me take element M and change the flex grow property. I take M uh, and I write that for M, the flex grow property is going to be 2. See what happens, the M grows a little more than the other elements. As you can see here, M is growing more than L, N and O, right? M is always growing more. Okay, so when we are stretching content, that time the flex grow property, if it has different values for different items, like if I change it to 4, then the amount of growth is going to be 4:1. Okay, to compare to the other elements that are growing. Okay, so when M is growing, you can always see that M grows always more than the other elements. Um, so let's get a pretty much good idea about how Flexboxes are working. Let's take a look. Oh, sorry, I think we worked on Flexboxes here. Let's just jump to. Okay, let's talk about media queries now and what media queries can do, and then we will put these two things together and create a responsive design out here. Okay. Media queries. So I'm creating a fresh HTML page again, HTML5, link it to some CSS, right? Let's create this div here, okay? And let's say divs are going to be of background color whatever, let's say green, right? And they will have a height and a width. Height 500 pixel, width maybe 900 pixel, and too much I guess, say 800 pixel. Okay. Okay, let's just see how that works for us. Right, now what happens with media queries is I add this media query here, media, and I write this div query once again here, or let me just remove the height and width parts, and I change the background color to red. Okay, and say create another media query, media, okay. I'll give something inside this media query, and let's say I change it to say something like okay, and I put my actual div element at the bottom. Okay, so what happened? I'm missing something, I guess. Let me just check. Let's try out the min properties, see if that works. Ah, yeah, I think this is working. Okay, so we were discussing. Yeah, sorry, I just had to talk to somebody. Yeah, so if I write like some media queries of this format, like I create like a different kind of width situations. Like if my max width is say 600 pixels, and then it is 400 pixels and 200 pixels, right? And I just give some different colors in different situations like this. And then what happens is that different screen sizes I am on, it just the different CSS rules are applied. So if I just select this element and see the styles that are getting applied here, so when I'm the smallest width, so right now the width of the device is 187, which is below 200, and in that case, the min width property of 200 pixel is what kicks in. Then when I go to the red property, like when the min width is above that, and then finally when the min width is above you know uh, is changing. So based on that, now you can make this constraints specify whether you are targeting the max or the min. Now how does max or min kind of properties help you is that, say you want to design first in for the desktop, and then you want to develop for mobiles. Okay, so that's called desktop first responsive design. So you design your website, like how it will look like on desktop, and then you design it for mobiles or for tablets or for mobiles, right? So then your default styles are all going to be desktop related. Okay, so then you create special styles only for those parts that would change. So you want to, like, say change something only when it is in tablet. Otherwise, like, most of the properties are same as in desktop. Two things will change in a tablet. So you create a max width property. You create max width 600 pixels, and then if it's below 600, then that property will get applied. Okay. Then you create a max width 400 pixel, and that gets applied for mobile phones. So when you are changing from desktop to mobile, you create exceptions for smaller screens. In that case, you use max width. And then there is mobile first design, where you first design your website for mobiles. In that case, all your default styles are designed for a device with, say, 400 pixel width. Then you want it to change like 2 or 3 things you want to change for 600 pixel. So then you create a min width 400 pixel property. Okay. Keep in mind that normal cascading of CSS is going to work out. So if there is I have these two properties called max width 600 pixels and max width 400 pixels. Now you'd see that if my screen is 200 pixels wide. Okay, so if my screen is 200 pixels wide, in that case, max width 600 and max width 400 both are going to apply. Okay, so which one should we take? So I mean, we can do two things. Either we can create properties like this, that max width 400, max width 600 pixel, and min width is 401 pixel. Okay, and we can do something like this for all the elements. Okay, so like from 600 from 400 to 600, then from 200 to 400, and then like that. Okay, now of course this is also going to work. The other way around is you don't need to define both sides limit. You don't need to define for max and min both, but then you need to make sure that if you are using max, then the largest one comes first, then the smaller one, then the smaller one, then the smaller one. Okay, that's because, like, let's just start with this thing and let's check out what we're doing. So screen and is not really required. I mean, it means that it only works for screens and not for other kind of media. But yeah, now if I just write the 200 pixel thing first, and then I write the 400 pixel thing, and then I write the 600 pixel thing. Okay, like in this order. Okay, in this order, if I write, it's always going to be green because the last rule that was applied, max width 600. Now this is true even when my width is below 200, right? Even if I'm below 200, max width 600, that condition is still true. I mean, for any screen size below 600, it's going to be true. Okay, so if you're using max properties, then align them in the descending order, and if you're using min properties, then you align them in the say I want it to be by default I want it to be brown, and if I'm above 200 pixels, then I want it to be blue. If I'm above 400 pixels, then red, and if I am above a 600 pixel, then green. And in that case, you will see that it works. So if you're writing min, then align it in ascending order, and if you're writing max, then in descending order. Otherwise, the styles will get override each other because if two max rules are applied, one is bigger than the other. The bigger one is always true anyway. So keep that in mind. Did you guys catch this part? Everybody is like okay with got the media queries part? What's the difference between max and min and how you should write them in the order? Okay, let's see how we can get these two things together and make stuff work, like responsive design. How do we use Flexboxes, media queries together, make things work good? Okay, let's just see. We create index.html. Okay, and we create style.css, correct? And we go forward and write an HTML5 template, link it to my CSS, and let's just say I create div class container and div class item, like we have done before. And now let's add some text into these divs. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go to this website called loremipsum. This is a website called lipsum.com, and you can get a lot of random text here. Okay, so we need a lot of random text. Let's check random text. I want to see how columns are working in my page. Yeah. Let's make a lot of divs like this. Okay, container, then item. Each item has a paragraph of text inside that. If I open this website right now, that's how it looks like. Bad. Okay, let's start doing something good here. Let's take container. Okay, and let's give it display flex. We have columns, but of course again bad, does not look good this way, so we need to change stuff. Okay, we'll get to that. Let's do this way. If my max width is 400 pixels, then my container is display block. Okay, नहीं कभी ये ना लोग कितना इधर हो जाना वो वरुण भी और भी रहता है ऊपर yeah, okay, sorry. What was I discussing? So media max width, container I set to display block. By default, I'm sorry, block, not blocks like putting blocks, just block. By default, divs are display block, correct? So let's go below 400. Yeah, below 400 it's block. Okay. Let's add some paddings to the items. They look bad. Item padding 10 pixel. Yeah. Okay. Little better. If I go below 400, here we go. So below 400, they are aligning one below the other. Above 400, like that. Right? We can give some margin as well. 10 pixel. Okay. Now let's start, making things better. So let's wrap stuff. Okay, so item has width what let's say 30%, and this container can wrap, flex wrap 30% each. They're going to take 1/3 of the screen. Okay, but then if I make it 30%, then below a certain width, it becomes like, it becomes like one item folds in, doesn't look so nice, right? Media max width 1000 pixels, right? And I change the width to 50%. Oh, sorry, not like this. Item width, my bad. Item width 50%. Okay, 50%. But then the padding, there's going to be 10 pixels padding. That's not going to work well, right? Let's reduce it a little bit, or let's keep the margin to maybe 10%. Okay, that's too much, so let's say I keep it as 1%, right? If it's 1%, then width and this width would be say 48%. 1% for paddings on both sides, 48%. Maybe a little less, maybe 45%. Okay, so it's going to be a bit of trial and error like this. Exact values, I think better if you use relative units like REM or EM, but yeah, I mean, you get an idea. Like it's half here, and below that it's just one each. Okay, but then the margins, again, we can make our either it's like 10 pixels, so maybe 45%. right? Or I think instead of doing all this, you know, what we can do is use flex grow properties instead. Okay, we can use like flex grow 1 on each. Always takes the full width. I think that's what we wanted. So 3 columns at this width, 2 columns at this width, and 1 column at this width. Okay, I think that's basically most of the websites that you see, you know, websites like Medium and all, they show up like this, right? And then if I want like my container to have a margin left of say 5% and margin right of 5%, you know, like on big screens I want some margin. If it goes below 400, container margin 0 or margin maybe 2%. Okay, so there's some gutters on the side, left, right, there is some gutters. Okay, and then we make it like smaller. Oh, I think we have to override like specific qualities can be overwritten only by specific qualities. Left, right can be overwritten only by left, right. Maybe a 1%, even less. Yeah, there's some gutters here. So gutters become a little like, you know, narrower in this case. So I think this looks good. Okay, so mostly you're using responsive websites. That's how they make it look, and you can make it possible using very little CSS. In fact, you know, just made 2 media breakpoints, one to reduce the item width, and I think that's it pretty much. Okay, and I've used only like classes, container, and item. So that's it. That's like how you can make things responsive using CSS. But if you use a framework like Bootstrap, they of course they make, you know, they give you much more granular level control. They can allow you to keep different columns uh, in mobile, in tablet, in laptop, in widescreen, 4 kind of scales you have. Okay, so they have their own custom breakpoints and stuff like that. So let's just try out how Bootstrap stuff works. You know, Bootstrap Grids. So Bootstrap is an external CSS framework, so you have to include some CSS in for that. It's not going to be purely our code, but that's fine. Bootstrap is very, very popular, very heavily used. I think like more than 30–40% of all the websites in the world, they're using Bootstrap, right? So it's fine using Bootstrap. It's almost like de facto, like, you know, you learn CSS, you have to learn Bootstrap also along with that. It's one of those things. Bootstrap, of course, I think you guys know it's available on getbootstrap.com. So for getting our, you know, layouts to work, we just need the CSS of the Bootstrap. We don't need the JavaScript of Bootstrap. Okay. So the CSS of Bootstrap is here: stackpath.bootstrapcdn.com, bootstrapmin.css. If you use the min file, it's all, you know, compressed CSS like this, and we can use the non-minified version, which is a little more beautifully written. For development purposes, you should use the non-minified one, I guess. It shows the, you know, layout a bit better. If you use the min one, then also it's not a big problem, because at the bottom of the file you will see there is a line which says source mapping URL bootstrap min.css.map. So when you're debugging in your browser, the browser will automatically find out the correct paths and all of that, because there is a source map available from the minified version to the bigger version. Okay. So I think somebody is asking about Flex or Grid. I mean, CSS also has grids. I personally prefer just using Flex with media queries, because I mean, that's just easier to write and easier to understand. And if I want full-fledged grid level support, I just use the Bootstrap Grid because that has a lot of extra features than pure CSS grids. Okay, so but it's up to a personal preference. You can make a lot of responsive websites using CSS grids as well. Okay, a lot of it is up to you, I guess. Okay, let's try out Bootstrap. Let's include the CSS file in our file. Okay, new file, index.html, HTML5 file. So you can either download the Bootstrap file, then it will work offline. If you link it, style sheet, href, this will of course work only if you have internet connection, because it's going to download it from the internet. Okay, let's go ahead. Like you see, if I write a file like h1 hello columns, stuff like that, okay, and just open this file. So you can already see the font is different. Like if I don't include Bootstrap, the font is your regular old Times New Roman that your browser provides, but now you have better stuff because we are using Bootstrap. Okay, we can allow put a class text center, I think. Yeah, so you can center the text, put everything inside a container, div, class container, then put the h1, a little bit of padding and all is added. So Bootstrap has got very good documentation. We are looking at the documentation for layout. Okay, and we can give some margin of padding like this, M2. There is some yeah, I mean that's a padding to inspect. Then some padding gets applied automatically, as you can see, by using P2. Maybe like more padding, P5. Yeah. Okay, so more padding out here, or only if I need top and bottom padding, I can give PY5, which means only padding in the bottom and top, not in the other directions. Left and right paddings are not there, only bottom and top paddings are there. Or I can do PT padding top only for 4. Yeah, only padding top is there. Okay, so you can lay out pretty well using Bootstrap. You can have paddings and margins available of this format. Okay. Or you can put the h1 outside and just give it a margin top of 4 and let our container be just like it is. That's also fine. Let's inspect and you will see that that's my text center. It has margin 4 top. This is the container. Let's start putting stuff in our container. Let's create a row and inside row we put columns as div class call, and let's put all that text that we selected from here into the column. There we go. Okay, so stuff goes here. Let's put a lot of columns like this in our page. As you can see, they are divided in columns like this, and when I make my screen too small, then it automatically become 2 columns and 1 column and like that. Okay, what I can do with the columns is I can define at what width they are going to start and break. If I inspect and go to responsive mode, at too small a width, at this point, which is I think 256. So let's put 257 width. Yeah. So from 256 or from 257, what happens is there is only going to be one column, okay, and if it's anything above 256, it's always going to be multiple columns, okay. Not too small, at least good enough to show up, okay. But yeah, if I now change something to give these calls some other property, like if I make it call MD, all of these turn them into call MD. So there's a and give all of them some paddings as well, okay. P5, P4 is fine, or P3 is also good. I think P3 is fine. P3 to all of them. So we have some paddings here. Now when I said that is MD, what does that mean is that screens which are of size MD, and what is the MD size? We can go and check out on Bootstrap, okay. There is responsive breakpoints, and there is like the breakpoints are like this, below 576, 576 to 768, 768 to 992, 992 to 1200, and above 1200, okay. So anything below 576 is called XS, stands for extra small. I mean, let me just comment that stuff out. It may be at the top of the page or somewhere like this. Yeah, here we go. So XS is 0 to 576. SM is 576 to 768. These are all like widths, you can say. Then we have got MD, LG, XL. 768 to 992, 992 to 1200, and 1200 to infinity and beyond. So like if you're rich and all, you can buy one of those really wide monitors that come, which are like 4:1 ratio wide monitors for gaming, stuff like that. So anything beyond 1200, okay. That's basically how Bootstrap divides its classes: extra small, small, medium, large, and extra large. And if I set something as column D, it means that it's going to be a column on medium and above screens, not going to be columns on all screens below medium, okay. So column D means become a column when I'm at least medium, otherwise not a column, it will be a row. Like if something is not a column, then it's a row, which means it's going to take the entire space, okay. So as soon as I drop below 768, as you can see the number here, okay, 754 width, okay. Yeah, I'm getting like 770 or something like that. Till then they're all columns, okay, columns. I just drop below 768, they are rows, okay. Now it depends, maybe you have content like blog article or something like that, you would prefer to make it a single column when you're holding an iPad, okay. So you can think of these as roughly mobile in mobile portrait mode, this as tablet portrait, this as tablet landscape, and this as, or you can say mobile portrait, tablet landscape, or laptop screen. This is going to be like desktop or monitor screens, okay, tablet portrait or mobile mobile landscape, okay. So you can like oh, I think I got it wrong. I think this will be tablet portrait, this will be tablet landscape, and you can say this is like laptop screens. You can say mobile or tablet landscape comes inside this criteria, and laptops, and this is like white monitors. Okay, so you can like divide things into this ratio roughly. Okay, so XSS, MMDLG, and Excel, like that. You can create breakpoints, divide your grid accordingly. I think you got an idea of how you can make like divide the grids. Of course, in Bootstrap you can create other interesting things as well, like you can make like I want that it's going to take 2 columns when it is in medium. Okay, above medium it's taking 2 columns, each of them is taking 2 columns. Okay, um, or I think let's say make it take 4 columns. To Bootstrap has a total of 12 columns. In every row there are 12 columns. So if I divide it into 4 columns each, then that would take 1/3 of the space. So above medium, it's going to be like 3 columns always. Okay, 3 columns always. Okay. Now if I write it something like this, that it's going to be call SM6, call MD4. See what happens is when I go to the SM level, it's 2 columns. Okay, at the XS level, it is 1 column. Again, XS is going to be 1 column. I go to SM. SM it is 2 columns because 6 columns means half of 12. When I go to MD, it's at 3 columns. Okay, and if I pass 1200, then if I want like on XS I want even more columns, I can do is call LG3 or something like that, call LG3, but for large screens it's going to be 3 columns. For less, that's like 4 columns here, 6 columns here, and it takes the entire width here. Okay, so you can like make a website look responsive like this. Okay, and on XS screens, as you can see, the gutters are also very little. See, there's very little gutter space here and very little gutter space here as well. Okay, so gutters are very narrow when you are in mobile screens. Sometimes you might want an item to be in the middle. Let's take this example from here, for example, and I'm going to create a new row and add this. I can do is like this item is of call SM6, MD4, and LG3. That's fine, but it's going to come up at the left of the screen always, like this. The last item, as you can see, it's always coming out of the left of the screen. Now I don't want that to happen. What I want is it to be at the center of the screen always. I can do is give it give a div class call and another div class call after and before this. Okay, so only call means it fills up the rest of the space. Okay, if I don't specify MDSM or something like that and I don't specify a number, it fills up the rest of the space that is left. So that way as you can see, it fills up the rest of the space here. Okay, if it's like yeah, so It's at the center, rest of the space is filled by something else. We can make it something like this, that you know, this is in large screen, in like large screens it takes you know what, 5. In medium screens it takes 7. So it's going to be at the center always. The rest of the space is going to be filled by the column fields. Okay. So I want it to be like not want this paragraph to be too wide. So even for large screens, I am putting it at 5. Okay. So it's going to be roughly the same width at all places. Okay. So that way you can create like a lot of responsiveness in your website. Say for example, we have in our website stuff like we have a list of courses, and the list of courses, they show up like 3 abreast at this width. We make it smaller, then it is like 1 course each shows up. Little wider, there are like 2 courses each show up. Okay. Similarly, like there are teachers here, there's like 1 teacher each. Now if I make it even smaller, then like the teachers, we just hide all the teachers. If it's a particular width, then only we are showing the teachers, something like that we can do. The reviews at the bottom also, like you can there's 2 at a time, a little bigger, so we can show like 4 at a time, like that. Okay. So depends, like you can make things responsive using Bootstrap. This also uses Bootstrap. If you look at the CSS classes in our website, we are using Bootstrap for creating the grid, and that gives you a good idea of how CSS works. I think anything you want to ask about, what other things you like, specifically for the topic of making things responsive, Flexboxes, media queries, Bootstrap, and all of these things, if you want to ask. And also, how does Bootstrap really work? That's also easy to find out. You can like right click inspect element, and you will see that there are the styles that are getting applied. So there is like min width 992 pixel, min width 768, min width 576. So it's like min width based styling. If you're using Bootstrap v3, version 3 of Bootstrap, you will see there are max width based queries because it's a desktop first framework. If you look at Bootstrap version 4, there are min width based queries because it's a mobile first framework. Okay. I hope that makes it clear. You're going to make like great responsive websites after looking at this, I believe. So anyone wants to ask something else about this, please go ahead and ask. And also like for the web development topics, like what other topics would you want to have like webinars in the future? I think if you have some particular topic in mind, please just like mention in the chat here if you can think of any topic especially related to front end development or Node.js backend related stuff. If you have any topic in mind you want to cover in a webinar, please just mention here. We will definitely cover that. Like Node.js basics is in like using the language part, like modules and require and stuff like that, or Express framework, or like what part of Node.js, like npm and package management, stuff like that, like anything specifically in that. And yeah, min again. So Samarpan, are you talking about min width properties? So min width properties mean that if I write two CSS queries, one for min width 10 pixel, one for min width 20 pixel. So when I am between 10 and 20, then the min width property is used, and after 20 pixels, the min width 20 property would be used. So min width property means that if my screen is of that minimum width, then that style gets applied. Okay. Also, just keep in mind that if I have written, min width 10 and min width 20. In that case, if I am at 30 pixel, then both these logic is true, right? Min width 10 is also true, min width 20 is also true, because my screen is at 30 pixel. So whichever is written later, min width 10 or 20, that one will okay. To cover what Amrit's asking about AngularJS, so I mean, this webinar, although it was like open for anybody to attend, it was specifically created for the people who are part of the WebD course right now. So to answer the people who are right now part of the web development course, what we are going to do is we are creating a course on Angular. It's a full-fledged course, separate course, of course, not as part of the web development course. It's going to cover Angular in a lot of depth. Like it's going to be 15-20 hours of content. There's going to be basics of Angular, routing, components, projection, modules, state management, connecting with REST APIs, creating a complete project with Angular, stuff like that. There's going to be a big project, a big course like that. There's going to be a separate course, a separate paid course on the website. But what we'll do is the first few sections of that course for the AngularJS course, we're going to make that available within the web development course. Everybody who has signed up already purchased the web development course, they will get access to the first one or two sections of the Angular course, and with that they can, in fact, they can make like say something like a simple to-do list kind of app with Angular. You would learn how to build that, but Angular in depth would be a separate course. If you're interested, you can buy that later on, maybe when you're interested, or maybe, I mean, after learning the webd stuff, you might be, expert enough to learn things on your own also. So not necessarily you might need to pick up that course, but yeah, we will put some sections, the preliminary sections, like you have the React, like you have 3-4 videos on React and 3-4 videos of Vue.js inside your current course. So similar to that, we'll put 3-4 videos on Angular in your current course sometime maybe next month. Okay. Anybody has any other queries? I mean, I'm just here for like 5 more minutes. If anybody has anything else to ask, please just go ahead and ask, and then I'll be signing off from this webinar. Thank you everybody for coming. Have a good night, everybody who was there. And if you have any other queries related to, you know, um, implementing Bootstrap and stuff like that, just feel free to, ping me on my email ID. So those who have my email ID, just ping me on my email ID, or if you are in the WhatsApp group, you can ask there itself, or on discuss.codingblocks.com on the forum. Okay. So yeah, thank you for attending. Have a great day. So I think email ID, something is present with the people who are already in the course. If you're not there, then I think you can go to discuss.codingblocks.com. That's our forum, and you can just ask things there. There's a web development forum out there, you can ask for that. So okay guys, I'm just signing off. Thank you again for attending.